Hi, my name is Sean Sweeney. I'm a senior consultant here at Ambition, and this is my colleague Aaron Lawler. And we're back with a latest installment of Ask the Experts, where today we're going to uncover what law firms really want, essential skills to advance your legal BD and marketing career.
I'm Erin. I actually am a client and market advisor at Ambition. And not recently, I can't say that it's actually been a while now, but joined Ambition after having concluded a 20-year career in big law, marketing and business development. I held various roles in various top 10 AM law firms. Again, wonderful, wonderful experience. And now translating that experience into helping our clients build best in class marketing and business development teams.
And we're excited to uncover and unpack another topic I feel like both you and I have heard a lot about from various candidates, clients, everyone in between, really. Very first bit that we'll get into is building your foundation. We'll get through some points on what good starting points look like, especially as you're trying to further your career. And we'll move into a topic I'm particularly excited about and passionate about, which is developing your soft skills. I think these are points that sometimes tend to be overlooked, maybe not as considered as heavily, and can provide equal level of importance to actual technical ability that people can offer as well. Third, from there, we'll go through growing your influence and visibility, important especially in ever expanding and growing departments and organizations. And climbing the ladder, again, a very important element of furthering your career and being able to see the next step, how to get there, and what tangible points that you need to attack in order to achieve that goal. And lastly, we'll leave some time for Q&A to answer any questions that you guys have, anything that you want to run by us or bounce off of us. We're yours resources at the end of the day. We want to be sure that we are able to give any insights that are a bit more tailored and specific that you may have.
And if you do have questions, sorry, Sean, but I just want to remind the
Of course.
you have questions as we go along, please just feel free to pop them in the chat. You can save them to the end, but no need to, because we'll be addressing any questions that we receive at the end. So with that, happy to kick it off and dive into it. And I'd love to take you through how you build the foundation, talking about building the foundation for your legal marketing and business development career. Very, very basic point. You need to master the fundamentals. There are different fundamentals for different roles. However, there are consistent needs across all aspects of marketing and business development roles, regardless of what your specialty is. And obviously, mastering the fundamentals is a key component of your success. You have to be able to do the work that you do well. There is no shortage of fundamentals that you can learn, but I'm going to focus on, at the risk, I should say, of oversimplifying things. I'm going to focus on two things that I found to be very effective, and some of the most successful people that I've worked with have mastered these particular fundamentals. And one is effective communication. And as Sean knows, in one of our recent webinars on the art of connecting, we dove deeper into what effective communication looks like and the importance of it. So we actually encourage you to go back and take a look at that webinar.
Yes.
And again, as I said, I don't want to oversimplify it, but communication, this of course refers to not only your written and your verbal communication, but also your nuances. And we talked about previously adjusting your tone and adjusting how you communicate with people so that your message is well received. But it is absolutely imperative that you learn how to effectively communicate with your key stakeholders, with people in general. And again, some of the best folks that we know in this industry are all incredibly strong, incredibly effective communicators. The other piece that I think is really important in terms of a fundamental is your ability to tell a story. Now, this often comes up when we talk about brand and developing your personal brand, but storytelling, certainly contrary to popular opinion, at least in the context we're using it here, is not necessarily about writing a children's story. Of course not. It's simply making your content relevant to your particular audience, right? You're taking the facts and you're creating a story, you're connecting the dots, and you're trying to drive it home in a manner and in a way that it is well received by your audience. So it's really a component of effective communication. But we've also seen, in my experience, that most of the sales that we do, most of the business development that we do is about telling the story of your firm, telling the story to your clients about where your successes are, about where your capabilities are, how you can help them. And of course, in order to be able to differentiate yourself in a very crowded market, the ability to tell a story effectively, I think, is really going to set you apart from your peers. And again, those are just some of the fundamentals, but a reminder that baseline fundamentals, you need to be able to do good work and you need to be knowledgeable about the work that you do. You also need to understand your law firm ecosystem. This differs from firm to firm. So in order to be successful, you need to have an understanding of the structure of the firm. Do they go to market by practice? Do they go to market by industry? Is it a combination of both? It's also important to understand, because this drives partner behavior, which we could do an entire segment on. And again, just a note on that point, if there are particular topics you'd like us to cover, Sean and I are
Yes.
always open to feedback, and I'd love to, we'd really love to know what you guys want to hear about. We're here to help, certainly. But back to the law firm ecosystem, understand the structure, because when it comes back to partner behavior, compensation certainly plays into that. So while I'm not asking you to ask the partners about their particular compensation, please let me be very clear about that point before we start blowing up LinkedIn. Understanding if you're in an equity partnership, if you have a non-equity partnership, if it's a tiered partnership, that would be helpful to you personally in understanding kind of some of the behaviors of the partners of the firm and how they work. It's also very important when you try to get things done, right? To understand what the structure is. Do the practice group leads report? Do they oversee one practice group? Is it a combination of practice groups that they oversee? Do they report into management, the board? Obviously, it's a little bit different at every firm. So it can help you to understand how your particular firm is structured, because again, that will just give you an advantage when it comes to navigating the internal intricacies, frankly, and some of the politics within the firm. So that also includes knowing who the decision makers are in the firm, right? What we run the risk of doing sometimes in these roles is becoming very introverted in our own area, right? This is what I do. I do corporate, I do M&A work. I know my key stakeholders. I know my practice group leaders, but it's also important to know who's making decisions beyond that, your own particular backyard, if you will. And with that, it's also important to understand what the business objectives of your firm are. Most firms have some form of a strategic plan. Again, I'm not asking you to ask the managing partner for the strategic plan, but it's usually very well known, and you should know and have a good sense of what the objectives of the firm are, obviously, so you could all row in a common direction. If you don't know what you're working towards, you could find yourself getting tripped up by non-high value tasks. So I found it to be really helpful if the team members understand what exactly the firm is striving towards. What are your goals for this year? Are there new clients that you're looking to take on? Is there an industry that you're breaking into? Have you opened an office in another location? These are really important things to know. It just helps you, again, understanding the firm can only position you for success.
Correct.
Speaking of success, there are areas that I think are important for your continued development in terms of, again, positioning yourself for success. This is not an all exhaustive list, but again, similar to mastering the fundamentals, there's more than what we've spoken about here. But in terms of the areas for continued development, I think some of the things that you need to focus on that can, again, benefit you in the long run is technology, of course. I'd be remiss if I did not say that. That does include AI. Different firms are at different levels with the use of AI, but I can't even say it's coming. It's here, and it's very top of mind for our clients. It's 2025. It's the way of the world. You can't walk out your door without talking about AI. So I think it's important just to educate yourself about it and understand a little bit about how your firm's using it. And then depending on your role, it could be beneficial to understand how your clients are using it. And at least, again, educate yourself on the basics so you can have
Exactly.
a knowledgeable
Be a part of the
conversation.
conversation. Exactly.
Yeah, no one's expecting to be Elon Musk, but that might open up a whole can of worms. So we'll just leave it at know your baseline, focus on your technology, where it's going. Obviously, it's an ever increasing important part of the portfolio. What we call business literacy, market knowledge, right? Stay up to date on the trends, understand, again, coming back to the clients, the key of all that we do, understand what's happening in the market, what trends you're seeing, where your clients are going, what they're looking at, what their business needs are as well, and just stay on top of that. That does change and shift frequently. So again, that will play into, as we talked about previously, the business objectives of the firm, but you can help yourself advance your career if you stay current on the market and you maintain a very effective level, if you will, of business literacy. And then what we typically see is that at the more junior levels, marketing and business development professionals are generalists, right? They work across multiple practice groups, or they're working in a function like brand or communications where they're handling a little bit of everything, right? A true generalist. As you matriculate in your career, it is often the play out that you will find yourself targeting a specific industry or practice area as you move up the ladder. Again, so you'll just find yourself doing this. And if you are driven to one particular area, that's great. If you are pulled into one particular area, that's great as well. And we'll talk about this a little bit later down the road, but look at this as an opportunity to really develop further. And again, and this is not a one size fits all. Again, I'm generalizing, but for the most part, as you matriculate, you will have to focus on a particular industry or practice, at least.
It's also there to make your life easier, right? I think at the end of the day, when you start to specialize a bit more, your time and effort is spent in one area, not 4 or 5. I think the common phrase is master of none. I think everyone wants to avoid that if possible. So as you grow through your career, if you find yourself, as we just talked about, kind of gravitating towards a certain area or being pulled into a certain area, it's an area where you can kind of grow and develop further. And again, call yourself a market expert, which again, I think all of the partners, clients that we service, or the space services, all appreciates kind of that special approach.
And very candidly, Sean, as we've seen, as folks move up the chain and as those positions, those senior positions come through the door, and what we see, there is often, if not always, a requirement or a request, at least for somebody who has knowledge in that particular space. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, all right, I'm going to kick it over to you now to talk about soft skills.
Of course. Soft skills. Honestly, it's an area, like I said before, it tends to get overlooked sometimes. It's very important, right? I think it plays a pivotal role in culture and how you get on with certain people that you work with day in and day out, how you achieve certain tasks and goals. And a lot of it is how you can work with one another in the best and most effective way possible. So I guess to get started, we can go through the more official and formal definition of soft skills. It's the personal and interpersonal qualities that shape how you work, communicate, and collaborate with others. Unlike hard skills, which are more technical and job specific, soft skills are about how you do the work rather than what you do. So again, they matter in a variety of ways. The first one that I always think of is they really help build trust, influence, and credibility. You're able to foster a reliance, not necessarily in that definition, but you're able to lean on other people within your team as you know how they operate, how they work. Maybe they know certain areas that they're really strong in and can offer the best type of assistance. We always talk about collaborative efforts when it comes to your cultures and teams and the ones that work the very best, and soft skills are a huge part of that. In the end, it's in an effort to make everyone's life easier, right? It's not a situation where all the cards fall on one person's shoulders. Getting a certain RFP, for example, out for review isn't going to fall on one person's shoulders. Ultimately, be a team effort. So understanding kind of how that can operate, how you operate best with your team members, are very, very important. Again, they're very much the difference maker in many cases for promotions and leadership opportunities. I think the purest comment to make here is that you want to enjoy the people you work with. Obviously, you want to make sure they can get the job done. That's paramount in terms of any operation or role that anyone's in. But as you start to matriculate through the organization, people who enjoy working with certain people and how they get the job done day in and day out are those that are going to have those more opportunities at their disposal to grow maybe more quickly in their careers. And I think especially now in the age of remote and hybrid work environments, it's more paramount to emphasize the soft skills to be able to communicate effectively, not only when you're in person, but when you're virtual as well. It's not the same. I know some people coming out of COVID thought that it was a similar type of approach. I think we've all learned by now after 5 years of doing it that it's not. And having the ability to effectively communicate, no matter the method or mode of communication, is really important, especially as we're going to be growing further into the next few years as well. Now, some core soft skills that I would say are pretty important. Aaron, I think you can comment on this, having led teams yourself in these environments. The very first bit in my mind is problem solving. Being able to think critically and creatively to overcome really anything. I think any partner, any BD department head is looking for different ways to solve a problem. I think the best leaders effectively say, no answer is a bad answer, no question is a bad question. You're going to be able to ultimately get to the most creative bottom line answer that could in turn yield a very positive return. Again, part of that is teamwork, collaborating respectfully, which I think is a very important note to make there, and productively as well with others. I think you want to respect everyone's viewpoint, perspective, how they come to a certain resolution or result. Again, I think no answer is a bad answer is always a good edict to operate by, because you never know how things could evolve or what a certain idea could spark in terms of a new plan or approach. Time management. I think this goes for anything. Prioritizing tasks, being able to stick closest to the money of what the best and most effective use of your time is. It just helps with meeting deadlines, obviously, and just making sure that you're able to prioritize work in a way where you're getting the most pertinent things out the door as soon as you possibly can. I think this goes for any industry or any type of job, really, but very important, especially within the legal BD space. And then lastly, conflict resolution. You're going to have different viewpoints. It's going to happen. No one's going to ever be perfectly aligned with their entire team. And therefore, navigating disagreements or different viewpoints with, again, empathy, very, kindness, being able just to see the approach and respect it. Obviously, it may not be the one that you agree with, and you may have a differing point of view, but ultimately, if you are able to collaborate respectfully and understand everyone's view and how they arrived at that conclusion. Again, it could always foster a new approach, again, a new answer or result that, again, could yield some positive things for the entire team.
If I may,
Um,
son, this is also
yeah,
an area as well that extends beyond the team that you work with and also
correct.
with your key stakeholders, because you will be asked to do things that may not align with the business objectives. It may be outside the scope of what you do, and you may have to manage expectations. So I would put managing expectations as kind of a subset of conflict resolution.
Couldn't agree more.
Right, absolutely, because it's about, again, we talked about interpersonal skills. Again, soft skills extend beyond that, but it's really about how, at the end of the day, again, as you said earlier, it's about how you work, not necessarily what you do. So,
Yeah, and again, it comes down. I think we talked about this at length. Effective communication is key. It really is kind of the root of everything. And I think in this case, when you talk about soft skills, especially in the different modes of communication that we have these days, it's just in that more paramount to ensure that you're focused on these areas. And I think it's a common area that people kind of tend to overlook, like I said before. But
and
yes,
what are you
those
looking for in terms of soft
they
skills?
so these different traits, all kind of wrapped into one, are essentially the definition of what is needed for legal business development, right? Now, emotional intelligence is obviously something we talked about with navigating disagreements and having empathy and being able to be kind through different decisions of that nature. You want to be able to work through certain scenarios that, again, may yield different viewpoints amongst the team, but nonetheless, you're able to still communicate effectively with one another about how maybe new ideas or new approaches can be fostered out of those discussions or maybe disagreements. It definitely works for sure. Resilience, again, it's very important to get back on the horse. It's going to happen. Obviously, the space itself is you get a lot of deadlines and demands that are necessary to meet, and sometimes the environments are a little bit more high pressure. Having the ability to work through certain scenarios and get to the end goal. Obviously, it comes down to a lot of the things we mentioned: time management, teamwork, problem solving. These are elements that are going to enable you to have a experience that may not require as much resilience. You'll be able to be a bit more well prepared for it. But in the instances that certain scenarios crop up, I mean, Aaron, you can speak to times where things didn't go according to plan. And
You will have bad days, and it's about how you say get back on the horse, but again, how you can continue to move on.
exactly.
Exactly. And that's just, again, these are very high pressure, high expectation environments, right? Everybody on the call knows that. So again, resilience is something that's ultimately going to benefit you in the long run.
Exactly.
And in your tenure actually shows resilience, at least from my perspective. Obviously,
It does.
couldn't be doing this for 10 years if you were not a resilient type of an individual. And again, these traits that we talked about, and also with soft skills, I think it's important to note these are not things that you can necessarily identify. Sure, you can use the
Exactly.
keywords in the interview. I'm a good problem solver, but and in your career, I mean, in this conversation is about how you progress in your career. If you would like to know about the basics of getting a job, again, we have another webinar that we did on that. But while you're in the role, these are traits that you need to demonstrate on a regular basis, and these are the things that
Exactly.
I really, really look for. So I'll let you wrap it up here with one of my favorites.
Adaptability. Yeah, honestly, it's as you just touched on. You're gonna have good days, you're gonna have bad days, you're gonna have plenty of curveballs that are thrown your way throughout the course of any day. And I think being able to be adaptable to anything that's thrown your way is incredibly important. When you talk about traits, especially that certain teams, hiring managers, firms overall look for, the ability to manage the everyday occurrences that may come up are incredibly important. It's always a good sign of someone who can take on anything that's thrown their way when they're able to manage it with ease, with confidence, know the chain of approach and command of how they need to get things done. Again, that's only going to help your career advance further, especially within a law firm environment. And again, I think it applies outside a law firm environment as well. I think it goes with just about anything, especially with what I mentioned before about time management. But those three things, again, are incredibly important. It's something we hear from hiring managers and HR staffs constantly about those they look for when they go to add to their teams. And again, it can only add more benefit and value to the individual, especially once you've made your way into an organization as well.
Thanks, Sean. And we're going to talk about growing your influence and visibility because, again, we are focused on how to advance your career. And these are important aspects as we talked about mastering the fundamentals and the soft skills that you need. How can you grow your influence and visibility where you are today? So, define your value proposition. This is your personal brand. We talked about storytelling a little bit earlier. This is not just be able to communicate, again, effectively, not
Mhm.
just what you do, but tell the story about what you get done, right? So, what sets you apart? Are you an expert on funds? Are you an expert on the automotive industry? Are you a great writer? Determine what your strength is and be able to articulate, again, effectively knowing your audience, what your value proposition is, what you bring to the table. If somebody asks you what you do and it's somebody who knows the industry well, telling them you're in legal marketing and business development may be a great starting point, but it doesn't really showcase that your knowledge or your depth of understanding of the market. You help clients build their business, you help lawyers secure new business. I mean, there's certainly a way to be able to communicate what you do. And again, knowing your audience, but be able to define your value proposition in a variety of areas, and particularly in the law firm itself with your key stakeholders. Become a go-to expert. Understand common pain points. That's one of the easiest ways to find out and how to become an expert in something is figure out what your stakeholders are struggling with and figure out ways to avoid them or figure out ways to overcome them. Again, back to the adapt piece, right?
Exactly.
Stay current on trends, as we talked about before, about that business literacy. This also will help you become the expert. As we talked about with problem solving, comes back here again, offer solutions, not just observations, right? If you identify a problem, it's my recommendation that you also identify a potential solution and bring that to the table because that is a very high value action. It is very well received and it actually shows that you are a high level of emotional intelligence, if you will.
Exactly.
And you want to be visible in moments that matter. Nobody likes getting a pitch dropped on their desk at 7 o'clock on a Friday night, right? Nobody likes that. We don't enjoy it. We're not asking you to enjoy it. We're asking you to understand it's part of what comes with the territory sometimes and to look at that as an opportunity. So it's important to be visible in moments of crisis just as much as it is to be in there in moments of opportunity, if that makes sense. And again, like we just said, you're going to have a variety of experiences, a variety of type of days. And again, that adaptability and that resilience will help you also become the expert in knowing how to manage your workload and manage the expectations. This is one of my favorites because we get to ask this question a lot, Sean, right? And I certainly did, at least in my prior roles. Okay, I'm not a manager. I'm not a senior manager. I'm not a director. How can I lead? You can lead from every level. I believe this firmly and sincerely. In fact, team members are often the first people to spot problems, people in the M&BD, because they're so close to the work product and they're so close to the clients. You have an opportunity to be able to spot the problems. Granted, you may not always get the recognition for spotting the problems, but just being able to identify that at the outset is really, really important and recognize that. Also, you can influence without having authority. And that's an
Exactly.
incredibly important piece because
It's encouraged in many cases.
absolutely, absolutely. You can, again, it's about your influence. It's about how you interact with people. It's about what you bring to the table. And please don't minimize that. The mindset that I'm just a coordinator, or I'm just a manager, I can't really move the needle. I can just do what I'm asked. That's a fallacy. So you can absolutely lead and you can influence. It's a matter of engaging with folks. And again, following these steps, mastering the fundamentals, becoming a go-to expert, things of that nature will position you to lead without authority. You want to be agile in your learning as well. This will all help you lead. People, again, it's also another one of the traits that we talked about, the adaptability, but being open to new opportunities is certainly going to help you position yourself as a leader and be seen as a leader within the organization. We talked about this as a soft skill, but I think it's important to reiterate that you need to manage your time well. You need to demonstrate time management. That is a fundamental and critical leadership trait. It's a key component of people who are successful in this role and people who obviously have gone up the chain. You need to be able to manage your time effectively because it's going to get more exciting, but it's only going to get more demanding as you matriculate in your career. And then the last thing in terms of leading from every level, help turn strategy into action. We talked about problem solving, but you could take that one step further and offer tactical ideas for executing a strategy or executing an idea. And that's always going to be well received as well. And then last but not least, build strong relationships. I know we mentioned we did an entire webinar on this, but in a nutshell, relationships are key to your career. I will die on this hill because I have not yet known a leader in the M&BD space who does not have a strong network and does not have a well-established set of long-term relationships. Again, so referring you to previous webinars we've done on that, but I think building strong relationships, we cannot overstate the importance of building strong relationships.
Correct.
So we talked about what you need to have basics, what law firms are looking for, the importance of soft skills, how you can grow your influence and visibility. So let's get down to it, Sean, right? People on this call want to know, how do I climb?
Climbing the ladder. Yes, indeed. Obviously, again, one of the more meat and potatoes of kind of what we need to get done as far as growing your career is concerned. And again, I think the first thing that everyone talks about when you talk about climbing the ladder is achieving upward mobility. At its very core, I think the very first bit that anyone will get into is you've got to perform well. right? You got to be reliable. You have a very solid work product. It's the baseline measurement in any firm's evaluation of the individual, right? That you could have the best soft skills in the world, but if you can't get the work product out the door, that's again going to inhibit your ability to climb the ladder. I think again, another thing to really note here, it's not always a straight path. Again, you want to really understand that lateral moves, again, can yield positive results. The common edict and phrase is 1 step backwards, some cases 2 step forwards. Obviously, you don't want to take too many steps backwards, but ultimately, again, if you see the value of kind of aligning your career or approach in a certain way that may yield, again, a more powerful step forward for you, again, those opportunities are something to always be very conscious of. For one example, you might move from a smaller firm to a more global firm where you have the ability to have a bit more of a focus in a certain area, and it allows you to become that market expert like we had talked about earlier in the webinar here. Another example is if you want to get into a new practice area or sector. If there's one maybe that you've touched on and really enjoyed, you wanted to maybe expand upon. These are areas that, again, if you have that kind of, I guess, passion for a certain area, you just tend to enjoy your day-to-day work more. I think that's just the common phrase is you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And I think that's a very applicable situation when you get to talking about something that when you have passion, right? It's again, not always 100%, but again, it's something that I think if you have passion for something and you want to make a move into a certain area,
that also links back to what we talked about earlier about as you matriculate, right? As you move up, you will be, there's an expectation that you'll be able to specialize. So oftentimes a lateral will give you that opportunity to specialize. And I don't think they should be discounted. I think lateral moves are kind of the underserved, underappreciated stepping stone, but I'll let you get back to talking about upward mobility and the rest of the facets here.
No, yeah, and then I was just gonna say one of the last points that I always touch on is relocation. I think there are certain markets that can yield a better growth for certain people over others, right? You get to talking about maybe finance sector or corporate sector, practice area coverage roles that are available in New York, for example, can really help advance someone's career because of the open opportunity that's available at many different firms at different sizes. Again, it just yields more opportunity. And that's something that, again, we're going to come back to constantly is just identifying and being able to recognize the opportunities as and when they present themselves. The second point is adding value where you are. You want to be generous. We go back to the point we raised about being a go-to market expert. You want to be able to share the insights you have, right? Share them with the team. That's, again, in turn going to increase the work product, which, again, is only going to increase the reliability and reliance that you create for yourself within the wider organization, which, again, I think everyone is striving for ultimately in their legal M&PD career. And so again, being generous, sharing insights, making introductions and supporting others, that's going to be very, very important to really focus on, especially as you're adding value in different areas across the ecosystem, not just in your specific team. Consistency. Again, this is something that we've talked about plenty throughout a variety of webinars that we've created, but consistency is key. Follow through as promised, deliver on time. You want to make sure, again, it goes back to the reliability piece that you can deliver based on what you had outlined to whoever you are working for or whatever you're doing. And I think the last point here that's really something that I'm very big on is be open to feedback. It helps you grow. It's very simple. I think if you're afraid to have that feedback, you're ultimately afraid for yourself to grow. It's going to may not be the best thing to hear. It's not something that everyone enjoys hearing, but ultimately, if you're able to take in good grace and apply it to your day-to-day approach, you're going to see tangible results. That's for sure. We talked about it before, living or thriving through collaboration. You're going to be collaborating with a variety of different individuals, right? Key stakeholders internally that could range from your team members to partners themselves to external clients. You're going to want to collaborate effectively, again, communicate effectively in order to, again, achieve the common goal of whatever you're trying to do in that current moment. You have these different points to kind of target. Obviously, some might be different as far as the relationship's concerned, as far as it could be your team, how to collaborate effectively with your team members because you do it so often, or it could be with your partners because you spend so much time interfacing with them about what they or how they need things to get done. A variety of different approaches can be taken, but nonetheless, having that focus in mind of how to effectively collaborate with whoever you're doing it with is, again, paramount when you're trying to move up the ladder in a legal BD career.
Yeah, Awesome. And Sean, I would add to that that yes, you talked about your key stakeholders. I would also encourage people and recommend that you do not discount the importance of your fellow business services teams in a law firm. Collaboration with folks outside. I mean, obviously, you've got to collaborate, like you said, with your key stakeholders, with your partners, and with your practice group leadership. You need to collaborate with members of your team and members of the wider BD team because this will help break down those silos. It will help foster that and foster the sense of cross selling that's so critical because you have to have an understanding of what the firm can offer a client in totality. But certainly collaboration with other fellow business services teams can be very, very important and impactful in terms of how you matriculate. Because again, it helps you better understand the firm, it helps you become more knowledgeable. And back to the hill that I will die on, building relationships can only help you in the long run.
Exactly. Exactly.
With that, I realize we've gone just a couple minutes over, but obviously this is something Sean and I are both very, very passionate about. And if
Correct.
you'd like to know more about it, we're happy to stay on and take additional questions, but we are conscious of your time. But obviously, if you'd like to know more about this or a deep dive on anything we discussed today, please do reach out to either one or both of us. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, guys.